Guest Marcia Parker, publisher and CEO at Cal Matters, of course, an INM member. Marcia is also a member of the INM Board of Directors and the committee chair for the INM Committee of News Fundraising Professionals. Without further ado, Marcia, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey. And so great to see everyone. That's my favorite part of INN in each year, right, is having the chance to really be together. Such an inspiring past day and already half the day today. So thank you all for joining. This is, I think this is a really exciting session. I'm really excited to have Jill joining us, mostly because we are at the beginning of this new community of news fundraising professionals. And a whole bunch of us have been working on this for months and months, really, to put this together. And we want this to be, it's really designed to be like a launch event, right? We're going to do lots of programming. The whole idea of our community is that we can learn from each other. And Jill's a, extraordinary person in this space. And we're going to learn a lot from her today and also from each other as we go forward. So we'll close the session, kind of just reminding you what we're going to be doing and how we're going to stay in touch with you going forward. But we just want this today to be a conversation. Ask lots of questions. This is our big opportunity to do that with Jill and to learn from her. And, I'm excited to get started. So I don't think she needs a lot of introduction, but I will just say that, she has done other sessions for us at INN and just knows and really understands how to effectively do this essential work we do of reaching out to potential donors, nurturing our donors, and really using our online capabilities in a really powerful way. So we're going to let her get to that. I'll just say a couple more words about her because I think she's got really amazing background. She oversaw the membership program at the NPR station in Chicago, WBEZ. She's been on a number of panels for us and a whole bunch of other panels in our industry. And, I consider her, and I know others do too, that she's someone that owns and really understands the best practices in this space. And that's really important. We all have plenty to learn, both from her and just from each other. So Jill, take it away. Can't wait to have you get started.
Thank you. So nice. Okay, I'm going to hop right in because I love campaigns, and I hope that by the end of this, you love them too and you want to do them. I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. Okay. Can y'all see blue, the essential role of the campaign? I'm going to assume that's a yes. Marcia, if not, I can see you on my Zoom, so you tell me if things are bad, just go like that. Okay, the essential of the campaign. First thing I want to do is get across the idea, like there's a definition of a campaign. I feel like every software I've ever come into contact with has their own definition of a campaign, so I just want to define it really fast. For here, a campaign, what I'm talking about is a series of messages targeting a group of people with a stated goal and a predetermined deadline-ish. I think the most important part about that is probably the predetermined deadline, but largely, this is what I'm talking about, a campaign. A really obvious example is a Kickstarter. Another really good example is a Walk for the Cure. That's, you have a walk on a certain day and that is your deadline. It doesn't have to be about money. It certainly is in my case, but an election campaign, the goal is to get people to vote. For events, the goal is to get people in the seats. Of course, pledge drives, which is where I learned most of this stuff. And then, of course, member drives at ProPublica. What makes a campaign essential? First, I want to back up really fast and just say, as a nonprofit newsroom, you're very likely performing a public service. I don't want to make any assumptions. I'm going to go ahead and assume that's probably true because we're all nonprofit newsrooms, but you are performing a public service. And an already established fact is that public service begets public support. So it's not that I have to trick people into giving us money. It's really more that we perform a public service. It's my job to remind people about that in the right way. But really, any request you make to the public for support will definitely raise some money. I have seen terrible pitches in a pledge drive. A new person who's super nervous, the worst solicitations will raise some money. That's just sort of the nature of mass communications. But my job is to how do I raise the most money from the most people without annoying any more people than I have to? And that's where a campaign becomes really essential. It is the most efficient way to raise the most money that I can from my readers. I want to back up for 1 second and talk about parks. Last week, I was talking to my husband about this presentation, and he came up with this analogy, and I thought it was brilliant. What I want to do is I think it's really difficult if you're not, in marketing like me, and you're doing much more interesting and important things like journalism and the actual public service. It can be really hard to take a step back and see your product as your audience sees your product. And I think that a really good example of that is parks. We probably all live near some. I live near a few. I walk through a tiny one every day. My nephews play at one when it's time for their soccer games. This picture here is a forest preserve near my house that's got like a bike trail inside. I would say I love all of these parks, but for like how often I use them and go to them, I don't know who owns them. I assume the park district does, but I actually think the county owns a forest preserve. I don't really know what's going on. I don't really know how much money it takes to keep the parks maintained. I don't know how many people it takes to make it run. I don't even know the name of some of these parks. I mean, I can walk through it and there's probably a sign, but have I ever read it? I don't know. I think when you think about your relationship to a park, you might love it. And if somebody from the park wanted to say, hey, will you take a minute and talk about this park with me? I'd be like, yeah, but I'm not going to think about it for myself. And that's where a campaign really comes in. So what makes a campaign? Like, how do we talk to our readers who really do love our public service about the inner workings and why we deserve support? That's where a campaign comes in. For 2 weeks, I'm going to email you almost every day. Like, that's like the long and short of a campaign for the most part. It really is the bread and butter tends to be email for us digital people, but that's what it is. It's a repetition of key messages. I might see the sign of the park every single day, but I might not read it until I've seen it like 20 times. And that does seem to be true for people who love what you're doing. If they're not in the right moment, they are not really receptive to your message, and you need to repeat them often. And I don't even just mean every day in a campaign for 2 weeks. I also mean 4 times a year. ProPublica does campaigns 4 times a year. I insist on quarterly campaigns. I need this drumbeat of a steady drumbeat of a message every couple of months. And then over time, that really builds up until people have really heard it a lot, and eventually they become receptive to it. It also eases the timing issue. And that's a way to keep this incredibly efficient is, the best time to ask a person to do something is when they have the ability to do it. And when it comes to mass communications, I don't know. I don't know when the best time is. Making a donation seems like an easy thing, and I assure you it really is, but it's not a routine thing for most everybody. And so a lot of people haven't even done it. They don't know. It could be weird. Sometimes we say the word member. What does that mean? Is it a special handshake, or do I need to sign a contract? It's just a little strange. And if they're, trying to get dinner on the table or go to pick up the children, they just might not have a moment for you. And so I don't know when the best time is where you have the mental and physical capacity to even think about making a donation. So instead, I'm just going to do it for 2 weeks, 4 times a year. And then in December, I'll do it for a month and hope I, eventually blanket all the possibilities. The last thing about a campaign that makes it so amazing is that the audience has more patience, because I don't know when the best time is for you. If I try to do this all the time, you're going to be like, I don't even care about your product anymore. Stop talking to me about donating. And so they're going to go. But if I just do it for 2 weeks and I say I'm transparent about it, I'm going to email you almost every day for the next 2 weeks. People are like, yeah, I like your service. I like your journalism. I like going to the park. That's fine. Email me for 2 weeks. I've learned the hard way that if you really don't say that, even at the beginning, what is going on, how much you're trying to do is helpful. Definitely when the last day is, people feel much more at ease. They're much cooler about letting you say what you need to say. So let's get down to the details here. I'm going to email you almost every day. That really is true. So how do I build a campaign? The first thing to do is decide when to have it, and preferably when to have them. December is the best time to have a campaign because, as I was talking earlier about the abilities, when you're ready to make a donation for a ton of people, that answer is December. In America, the end of our tax year deadline is December 31st. And that does matter. It seems to matter less for low dollar donors, but it's also just a tradition. So, for decades and decades, nonprofits everywhere have been like, December is the moment. And so us too, December, hands down, is our big, I think a third of our money comes in the month of December. It's easily the biggest one. It's a whole month-long campaign. All the campaigns before that really are just building that so that all those arguments that I'll get into in a second are seeded well in advance of December. Summertime is the worst time to have a campaign. A lot of people have children that they're out of school, or their teachers, like just more people than usual are in a tizzy in the summertime, and it's a terrible time to raise money. I have a campaign in the summer though, because I insist on these messages happening every couple of months. And so how I get around it is I just do it in June. The campaign launched today for ProPublica. And I just have a smaller goal and I just expect less from it, but I need that message. It's about raising revenue today. And it's also a lot about prepping the revenue to come in December. So then when I know when I want my campaign to be, I create a marketing calendar. You just plot out when you'll send your emails, have ads in your newsletters, however you can talk to your audience, plot out how this will go. This is a really simplified version of this current campaign. It was supposed to start on Monday. It's a long story why it didn't, but it didn't. It started today instead. This is a simplified version, and I would email people every single day if I could, but I'm just one human, and so I do it as much as I can. I put up newsletter ads. We put up a post story note on the website. We add a lot of assets. The reason why we don't have these all year long is the same as why we have a campaign period, is I don't want people to get blind or deaf to my messages. I want them to be sort of surprising to earn attention when the moment is right. And so when the campaign is over, I take all this stuff down. That is the easy part, to plot out when you're going to do your stuff. The hard part is obviously making the stuff. So making the stuff. So like, how do we make the stuff for a campaign? I just want to back up really fast and talk about how someone decides to do anything, really. Mostly, how does a person decide to spend money? And that's the basis of all of the things that I try to talk about when it comes to the inner workings, or like why people should support nonprofit journalism. When it comes to making a decision, what happens is like instinctually, you just want something, you want to spend money, you want to support, you want this, you want that. And then your brain looks for logical arguments to support that, what you want, what you already want. If your brain can come up with the arguments, you're good to go, and you probably take that action. If your brain cannot, you might not take that action. A really excellent analogy, if you ask me, is auto buying, because it's such a big purchase. Those arguments are actually kind of obvious, and you can usually sort of reflect on them. It's actually a really fun exercise to reflect on the last few purchases you made. But in pandemic, there's hardly any purchase. Like, I never go to stores anymore. But this is actually a car I used to own, and I loved it. I thought it was great. I forget what it was that attracted me to Subaru. Honestly, maybe nothing, because it's just a gut want. Like, oh, look at this blue sporty car. It's so pretty. That's probably what I said. So then what are the logical arguments? And literally what it was for me is airbags everywhere. I think I was actually at the dealer for like an hour, and then he said, oh, we have this new thing, and it's side airbags. And I am appropriately terrified of highways. And I was like, where do I sign? This is how almost all decisions go. So back to making the stuff for nonprofit news. What do we say in all this stuff? How do we most efficiently tell our audience about the inner workings and why they should support nonprofit news? Because they like the articles, but now it's time to talk to them about what it is that needs support. I call them logical and emotional. That's fuzzy. I hate to label them because they all work together, but I do have them split up on two sides. I will talk about what the sides mean in a second. The first argument is habit and loyalty. I consistently read ProPublica and I like it. That sounds obvious, but it is not obvious. I don't even know how many times I've been to a park. But if a park person said, you probably come here every week, I'd be like, yeah, that's correct. So you have to really say it to them. Unity and identity. Now, this one honestly could take its whole hour all by itself, but you do need to establish that you are part of the same group as your readers. And that can be done in 1,000 different ways. A lot of times is done with your actual product, the kind of work that you put out, and how it makes your reader feel about what that article, that they just read. A really common one for nonprofit news is that we're independent. And it's why we say it so much, because a lot of our readers prefer to go to their local coffee roaster as opposed to their Starbucks. And so they're like, oh, you say the word independent. They're like, right, I like independent things. This is my independent newsroom. You can also, I would say smart is a big one. I don't know about you guys, but when especially I feel like Lisa Song is one of our climate reporters. And when I read her stories, which I struggle through because she's so smart and I'm like, whatever. on like emission carbon credits is a one she just did. I feel like such a smarty pants after I read it. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm smart now about this, and this makes me feel that way. And so it's smart. So my people, it can make you feel smart. And if we, say that, then we're connected. A huge one for most people, not ProPublica, is geographic. I am in Chicago. Block Club Chicago is my local independent media. And if I consider myself a resident of Chicago, this is a big part of like being a real civically engaged resident is, becoming a member of my local independent media. The last two are pretty easy, but again, you still need to say them. ProPublica needs money because blah, blah, blah. I will warn you here, let me check time, that you don't want to get too into the weeds with this, because if you do, people end up instead trying to save you money. So if you're like, oh, our printer costs blah, 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 they'll be like, oh, I'm not going to donate money, but I will talk to you about printers. But you do say, this costs money, salaries cost money, we spend money on travel, data, whatever. And that the money comes from you. We are not publicly owned. We don't have shareholders. We don't have a rich owner. We don't get money from the government. We get money from you. The other side is more of emotional arguments, if you will. The first one is consistency. People like to be consistent with their past selves. And so a good place for this is Twitter. And you can say, you follow us on Twitter. Now is the time to take the next step in this relationship and become a member. They've already publicly said that they are a fan of you. And so they want to be consistent. Another one is social proof. As I said before, this is not a routine thing to do. And so it's important that a person understands that this is a big winning group of people. Like tens of thousands of people have joined us. Hundreds have in this campaign. Let them know that they are not the first to venture into this weird unknown territory. It's very common. And this is a group filled of people just like them. Another one is authority. This is sort of similar. It's people that they trust, endorse it, basically. ProPublica had a John Oliver moment right after Trump was elected, and John Oliver said to them, donate to these places. And one of them was ProPublica, and all these people were like, oh, John Oliver, so he's a trusted man. For regular purposes, this can be why, or why you might want to build up your leader of the newsroom as a personality, like, that has their own newsletter and talks to your readers, because they are become trusted, and they might already be, but that's sort of the authority. A big instinctual one is urgency. This is why campaigns work so well, is because when you talk about this stuff for 2 weeks and then you say, and today's the last day you can do it, people are like, I've been meaning to do it. I'm totally into it. I love you guys, whatever. I've been busy, but now it's almost over. And now I have the burst of energy that it takes to go up and get my wallet and actually make a donation. That can sort of go hand in hand with scarcity, which is the next one, where you say there's just hours left to go. People are like, oh, okay, just hour, like, there's like less resources, then they take action. Scarcity also comes in handy if you are offering like a premium and you say, oh, I have 100 t-shirts and the first 100 people to make a donation will get a t-shirt. When you have like dwindling numbers like that, people take action because they want a t-shirt and they know that their time is limited. Another one is reciprocity. T-shirt, again, like you get something, you give something. Obviously a much bigger reciprocity one is that people say, I read you every day and I love you, and it's only fair that I support you now. The next one is salience, which can help explain why nonprofit newsrooms get big bumps. And I think salience, like whatever's relevant. If we're relevant, then it becomes a little bit easier to convince people that now is the time to make a donation. A great example is COVID last year. COVID, scared everybody. Journalism really stepped up. There's, your newsroom probably covered a lot of it in a variety of different ways. And people were reading your product, feeling better about things, feeling more in control, feeling more aware. This is a very scary time. And then suddenly they see a donate button and they're like, oh, right, yes, I've been, this is very like the value of all this is just very top of mind. It was very salient. That can happen. And if it does happen, you should take advantage of it. And then the last one is prosody, which is personality. It's important to have a beating heart underneath all your messages. Do not sound sterile if you can help it. Sound passionate. Sound as passionate as you truly are, which is why you are doing this work. Now, the left side, if you ask a donor, why did you donate? They're probably going to answer something along on the left. What actually made them take the action today tends to be what's happening on the right. And that's how the two work together. And the bulk of an email is the left side arguments. But at the end of the campaign, especially, and at the end of every email, you want a little urgency, like take a stand today and, join us now. I don't want to read this whole thing to you because I don't want to take too much time, but I will, you'll see these slides later, and I'm going to highlight for you all these things. I just whipped this up. So if there's any typos, please forgive me. But, this letter, this really basic paragraph that honestly is like, my emails are much longer. This has all those pieces. So you read ProPublica every day. It's like established habit. Again, they might have never really noticed that they visit your site once a week. So it's your job to be like, you do this. One thing I do want to say here is try not to ever say if you believe this, if you do this, because the people that are going to donate, it is true for them. So don't tell them, don't ask them, don't give them the opportunity to be like, do I not, whatever. Just be like, no. If you're going to give, and this is who I'm talking to, you come to us about every week. You'll remind them that is what they do. And then they read and they're like, you are talking to me, aren't you? The next one is like value. You get something out of this. We provide the sort of stuff that you really place a high value in. Join us is a little bit of social proof. Like, we are not alone. This is not a thing. Like, join this party here. Establish yourself as a nonprofit. People like to make donations to nonprofits. So it's really important that they understand that it's a donation, even if it's a subscription though, or a membership gift or any of those things. Say what it is. And then independent, again, that's the identity piece. Your donation will help us publish. Like, this is why we need the money. Like, this is littered with things that are like all pulled from that. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll write the thing and then I'll review my list and see if I can edit things to work in better. So before midnight, last day, those are, urgency and scarcity. And then I think you can probably tell this by now, I am full of exclamation points pretty much all the time. So I personally put a lot of exclamation points in. That is prosody. If you are not an exclamation point person, by all means, don't add them in. Just make sure your personality is shining through. So that's an email. You have lots of time, and I advise you to take it to make your case. When it comes to ads, digitally, or even like social media, you do not have as much time. So you want to get this across faster. But the good news about this is these are visually pretty, and you have a lot more opportunities to show people. And it's very likely that, an average member or donor needs to be asked or even shown an ad, some number of times, let's say 50. We assume it's many. They need to see an ad 50 times before they're going to give. So at 50 times, that's a lot. And that's a couple of campaigns. And so when you plaster these all over your website, they see them again and again and again. They don't, it's not this that maybe it does, or maybe it doesn't like get them to donate, but it is definitely planting some of the seeds to come later. The one on the left here is very much a left side identity-based argument. Keep them honest. Like, we are the place that will hold power accountable. And they see that and they're like, yeah, I like to hold power accountable too. And then, support fearless, independent, like that whole thing is just on the left. And I like the word donate when it comes to a nonprofit. In fact, I prefer donate over almost any other call to action, only because it's such an easy, quick way to tell people you're a nonprofit. And then you don't have to actually use the words. But honestly, you can, whatever your call to action is, use it. One other way, how to annoy people less, I just want to go over really quick, is in your footer. Not everybody wants to be solicited by email, and that is fine. You definitely want to give them a way out of these things. And so I actually have it in a couple places here. The first paragraph is just our standard footer for all ProPublica emails. The little bit at the end, we added only all of our solicitation emails, and people very much take advantage of it. So how I am able to email somebody pretty much every day for 2 weeks and a full month of December is like this footer. Plenty of people hit that, and then I stop asking them. And if I look at the list of people who have hit this button, a lot of them are donors. Like, people are able to self-select, and you don't really lose them. You just lose them from email, which is great, because giving people the ability to tell you what they want, how they want to be communicated with, is perfect for everybody. I really only want to email people that are receptive to my messages. And so by keeping this in here, we call this opt down. it really does save me from like big, huge opt-out numbers. I do not have big, huge. I have very small opt-out numbers, but it's pretty big for people who opt out. Okay, so make the stuff. You made it. That takes the most time. The next thing to do is execute and measure results. I'm going to talk to you about measuring results. I do not want to get too in the weeds here because, you know, measuring results, it's my full-time job to do this. I am well aware that many newsrooms do not have a full-time person to do this. If you just do campaigns and you really don't look at the results, that is okay. I still recommend that you do that. For one thing, like if I think about my past, I come from public radio. Radio stations all over the country have been doing pledge drives for decades. And almost all of them, even the tiniest ones, get about 5 to 15% of their audience to donate. It's really, it's like where somebody said once, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. You know, the steady drumbeat of messaging will eventually break through, even if you stumble along the way or, you know, maybe don't squeeze out every bit of efficiency you can. Again, almost every request you make will generate something. Even here at ProPublica, where I email people all the time, every single email I send out, every one I add during a campaign still raises even more money. Everything you do will do something. And so measuring results is wonderful, but you can also just take cues from Newsmatch. You can take cues from me, from organizations that have bigger. I take cues from presidential campaigns. They have got a huge email team and like all the A/B testing on the planet. So if they start salutations in a different way and I like it, I'm like, oh, I'm going to assume that that's been tested and I'll try it out. Like you do not have to reinvent this wheel every single time. But if you can, then, you know, this is a great way to improve. Your email software ought to help you figure out who should be receiving emails. I don't want to get into deliverability. That is its own section, but you know, you should really only email people who, again, you think would be receptive to a solicitation email. And that's probably going to be people that receive emails from you anyway. Definitely not people who have not opened an email from you in a while. I'd cut those people out. It should also show you how the emails perform. Your donation form vendor should help you determine how to track which donations come from which channels if you can. My donation form software tells me if a person gave a donation through an email because I have a separate link set up, or if they gave on a certain asset online. Those are all separately tracked as well. Your CRM should help you understand who donated, how much they donated, when they donated. These are the things I always look at. I always look at email results, although again, no pressure because they will do something. And as long as you're being even mildly reasonable, this should be fine. Another beauty of campaigns is it really is only 2 weeks. And so the amount of damage you can do in 2 weeks is just not that great. It's fine. But I tend to look at open rates. I look at opt out and opt down just to understand everything better. One interesting tidbit that I will share with you is at the beginning of a campaign, I say, this is the beginning of our campaign. I'm going to email you a lot for the next 2 weeks. The biggest day we have for opt-outs is the first day. It's not the last day. The first day when I say, this is what's going to happen, is when I get the most opt-outs. Now, none of them are big numbers. We are very comfortable with, I think our average is 0.15% opt-out. But you would think that the last day or towards the end, like after so many emails, they're like, oh, enough, I'm done with you people. That's really not what happens. They opt out on the first day. So that's interesting. And now you know. The other thing I look at is dollars raised per send and open. I really should have worded that differently because I assure you I'm not raising dollars per send. I'm raising pennies per cent, but I do look at those results in that way. When it comes to who's making donations, I look at the number of donations, total dollars raised of whatever it is I'm looking at, usually by channel or new versus existing donors. And then the average gift of that group, and then the percent of what that is of the total gifts. And then, you know, new versus renewing are really common. And if renewing, when did they join? We still are looking at, you know, Trump bump donors. How are they performing even 4 years later? How are people performing when this story came out or during this? Or, you know, it'll be really interesting to see, you know, a lot of us had good traffic spikes and a lot of donations from COVID coverage, and that was really health care specific. It'll be interesting to see what their behavior is over the course of a couple of years. And then I also look at channels, email versus, you know, or pop-up or modal. Twitter is a great place to find new donors, things like that. When it comes to like measuring the results. These are just some things that I show to my bosses. This is from our spring 21 campaign. It's actually, the solicitation email is what I should have said. Solicitation is email. And this is actually bigger than usual. Our traffic was kind of meh at the beginning of the year. And we think that that's probably why solicitations were more responsible than usual. I will tell you, in December, because it is such a common time for people to make donations, this chart is really flipped. Most of our money comes in online from December. That's not to say we don't email these people too. We do. Some people just then eventually go online and make a donation through our website. But this was unusually strong solicitation email campaign. This is what spring 21 looked like by the day. As I put this down and have been practicing this today, I realized it's a really good example for everybody, because usually the first day of a campaign launches really well, because you've been doing this, I've been doing this every couple of months for a while now. People are like, yay, I love you. I'm going to do it, but I'm busy. I'm not doing it today. And then, the campaign ends, and then the next one begins, and they're like, oh, right. Okay, I'm doing it now. And so you haven't, campaigns just naturally always start big. And then they end really big, because by the end, that's really, you've made your arguments over 2 weeks, and you've said some really awesome stuff. And they're all like, that is true. All of this is true. I agree with you. And then time runs out and they give. This cracks me up, because now that it's over, I can see that our first email, I'm going to say that underperformed. And so my job is to go back and look at that email and be like, why didn't it raise more money? It should have. Now, I wouldn't know that until the campaign ended. So anyway, once you execute and measure results, change based on the results, but again, just also change based on what you're seeing colleagues or peers do, and then do it again. I cannot stress enough that this is a well-oiled machine at this point. It's hard to get going, making all those plans and making all the stuff and writing whatever and getting a designer in. But then once it's done, regurgitate almost all of this. If an email does well, send that email out 5 different times. For sure. I mean, I have, what do we call it? My boss calls it, I forget what she calls it, but she's like, do you have any emails that have that are about blah? And then we sort of puzzle piece in examples that are recent. But, now that stuff is done, it's at my fingertips and I have more time to do everything. So, one campaign, keep all that stuff and just give it minor updates. And that's it. That's all I have for you. I will say before I stop sharing is to please email me. It might be obvious that this is my very favorite thing to talk about on the planet. And so if you have any questions whatsoever, I am well open to questions. And with that, I am done. So we can take questions now as well. Just gonna go to the Q&As, or if somebody wants to take themselves off mute and just jump in, that would be fine too.
Jill, I can toss one at you.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. We have a question from Aurora from Bay City News. And I'll just kind of read from it. And Aurora, if I get it wrong, please feel free to step in, or if you want to elaborate at all. This is Aurora speaking. Jill, you sort of already touched on this with using a summer campaign as a, quote, prime the pump, end quote, to get readers prepped for future asks later in the year. And what Aurora says is that they are planning an anniversary campaign for this summer, and she acknowledges that it might not be optimal timing. However, what can they do to maximize this campaign, the summer campaign, even if the timing isn't ideal? Any suggestions?
I think that that you are literally performing the definition of maximizing it just by doing it. The more you put out there during the amount of time you have decided to do it, that is how you maximize it. If the more things the more ways you can talk to people. Again, I wouldn't extend the time, because that gets annoying after a while, but in the 2 weeks, everything you can do. And an anniversary is good, because that really does call attention. It's interesting, it's celebratory. It gets people going. It makes them reflect on what's happening. But the best way to maximize it is to just reach out in as many channels as you can. And I'm a kind of a one-person shop at ProPublica. My boss is critical to my success. Don't get me wrong, but I'm the person that does it. And so I don't fundraise on Instagram, and I wish I did. I really wish I did. Our audience team does amazing things with it. And so if you can't, that's how to maximize it, is if like somebody said to me, what else could you do if you had more resources or money? I'd be like, I would hire a designer and I would get on Instagram, because the more places that you can surprise them with a little ask, the more they're going to be like, oh, I saw it here, and all the colors match, and this is all clearly the same campaign. And that is how you maximize it.
Hi, this is Dwayne with Alaska Center for Excellence in Journalism. And we've got a lot of small newsrooms, small operations, just widely distributed around the state. Are there any simple pre-packaged programs that a small organization could tap into and use with the minimum of person power?
Yeah, I believe that is the definition of News Revenue Hub. Am I right about that, Jeffrey? Yeah. Yes. I think there's a whole organization that does just that. They are News Revenue Hub. There might be one or two people here. If not, we can certainly pass along their contact information. That is what they do, is they sort of take this whole process off your hands and they do it on your behalf. I don't want to speak too much for them because I am not them, and so I don't want to say anything incorrect. But yes, there absolutely is an org that does this.
Hey, Jill, this is Marcia. Because we use News Revenue Hub, as do many of our members, but not all of them. It really is good, especially if you're a small organization. When we first kicked off membership, that's where we started. And it's really nice having them do a lot of stuff for you. And it's pretty affordable. They make it affordable for the size of your organization, et cetera. So you might consider that.
Yeah, especially because it will raise money.
Yeah.
It's very likely that it pays for itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And they'll write the campaigns, do a lot. Of course, we provide a lot of that. Newsmatch provides a lot, but just in general, it really helps you get going and gives you confidence that you can do it yourself going forward.
Thank you. Very helpful.
We have another question for Jill, and actually this has popped up quite a bit in the chat, so I think it's a good one to bring up from Jess. Who is in regards to metrics. I know this is a key point that we really want to focus on when we're evaluating success, especially from all of our hard work and efforts. What metrics do you, Jill, track to make sure that you're not inundating your audience with daily email pitches? That's part of it. Mainly looking for the right metrics to communicate to staff that the fundraising emails do not cause us to lose our audience.
I totally understand. That is currently even one thing that I definitely do have to communicate. It is definitely an ongoing conversation. I'm lucky enough where my past, I reported to a woman who was like the global email person of Groupon, sent out a lot of emails. So I actually learned a lot of it seems aggressive, but then when you do it, you're like, oh, this actually doesn't seem like that big of a deal. So it is an ongoing conversation. It is fine. How I do it is, we all are very clear on what an acceptable opt-out rate is. And 0.16 is what appears to be benchmarked across nonprofits and certainly media as well. And so we try to stay under that. That said, if I hover near it, especially on the first day of a campaign, I don't sweat that. And then when it comes to how many people have donated, that is usually enough to make everybody be like, oh, okay, that is, an organizational priority to deepen the relationship with these people. The other thing I look at is I look at how much money every single email raised. And if there's ever appears to be some kind of diminishing return on emails sent, that would be a key. I have yet to come across that. People get a lot of emails. I will also say that I look and see how many people open emails during a campaign, and the average number of people or emails that people open is 1, even though I'll send out 12, or every December I'll send out like 20, and they open 1. So I'm like, great thing. It's a park thing again. Like, you go to the park every day, and I try so hard. I spend my whole life trying to talk to you, and they get 1 email. And so when it comes to diminishing returns, that would be a thing, and that we always are looking for it, but I haven't seen it. Every email I send out raises money and doesn't seem to lose that many people at all. And so it does need to be an organizational priority to deepen this relationship. And one way that has helped me is to really stress that I'm not conning people. I'm not, twisting their arm in any way. People love support. This is like a really fun job. They like doing it. I mean, it's important that they do. Frankly, that's part of what the prosody means, is that, you don't want to be too dour or terrifying about guilt them into giving. They like your product. It does deserve support. They know that. And then when they donate, they love it. And so they're so pleased to do it. It's the natural end of what relationships should be. This is very much like a funnel thing that I'm talking about here. So I hope I'm not being too weird about it. It's probably better to talk about it on a case-by-case basis, but I definitely know the pain points and we have overcome them. It is tricky, but that is sort of how we do it. We look at opt-out, we look at opt-down, we look at dollars raised, and we really stress how thrilled everybody is to actually be joining us.
Thank you, Jill. We have about 1 minute left. I think with that, I'll turn it over to Marcia to kind of take us home. Marcia?
Great. Thank you so much. That was so good. I feel like I learn from Jill every time I hear her. I took lots of notes, even though I'm getting the presentation, as we all will get. So that's really helpful. Thank you so much for just sharing all of that expertise. One of the things I love about hearing presentations from Jill is that it feels accessible afterwards. You don't feel overwhelmed, there's no way I can learn how to do this. It's too big. ProPublica is this giant news organization. It's doable, everyone. I felt that way in the beginning when we were first getting going at Cal Matters, and we've been growing our membership program, but there's so much new learning that we have. So just take advantage of that. Don't feel scared or nervous about making it happen. And if you encounter things along the way, feel free to reach out. That's what we're here for. And that's what our community is here for, to support one another. Let's see. What else? I think just maybe in closing, we do want to let you know that you're going to hear from us, right? As part of this new community that we have formed, we're going to be doing programming all year long. We're starting to kick that off. Our team, our whole committee, we have a number of our committee members actually here today. And we're really looking forward to presenting lots of programming opportunities for you going forward. Let's see. Jeffrey, do you want to say a couple words about kind of our next step?
Yes, indeed.
Our next conversations with people and communication.
You bet. Thank you, Marcia. I just put into the chat box now a link to a feedback and contact form. We're looking for ideas on what programs and topics should we prioritize. Your information, your feedback is valuable, and that will help our committee members for the News Fundraising Professionals community to start to prioritize what you are looking for. So please take a moment to share your ideas. We'll also be throwing that into our Slack channel, News Fundraising Community Slack channel as well. So please keep an eye out for that. I know that we're about a minute late. Keep an eye out for more information on the INN community of news fundraising professionals soon. Thank you, Jill, for a fantastically informative session. Thank you, Marcia, for leading us through.